Well, hello and welcome. I'm going to be reading through, just as a reading, the Dalisia of Theocritus. This is in fact one of my favourite poems, and this is commonly called Idyll 7. It's a lovely poem. It's one which is very complicated. In fact, I think it's one of the most complicated and most argued about of all the idylls of Theocritus, and it is in fact one of my favourite poems in all of Greek. You'll see why perhaps as we read through it. It's a poem that I think operates on numerous different levels, and I really am not, having read quite a bit about this poem, I'm not convinced that anyone, including myself, really understands the full depth of this poem because of the different levels that it operates on. So during the 19th and 20th centuries, scholars saw it as the basis for this so-called masquerade bucolique theory, which claimed that real literary figures were being discussed by Theocritus behind the guise of the characters he portrayed. And in particular, this is one of the poems that was concentrated on with that theory. This particular theory has now fallen out of favour, except for the possible, or perhaps probable, identification of Theocritus himself with this character Simikidas that we're going to meet in the poem. One scholar, F. Williams, claims that we have here a theophany in the poem, and that Lycidas is really Apollo in disguise. That theory is very interesting, and there may be some truth in it. Another scholar, Crevens, sees geography as the linking theme in the poem. Richard Hunter, in his commentary, sees the poem as having much in common with Plato's Phaedrus, with the aim of intellectual progress being replaced with attainment of hesychia, that is, quietude and peace and tranquility. And there is a certain sense of tranquility and beauty in this particular poem. I'm going to do this probably in lots of about 20 lines at a time and do it slowly because the Greek can be difficult in places, and of course it's written in a pseudo-Doric artificial dialect which was never spoken but is one which Theocritus, well, perhaps invented or created as a way of trying to mirror the language of rustics. And so you have people who are goat herds and ox herds and so on, but who are speaking in a very fairly elevated and very beautiful language. The speaker in the poem is Simikidas, whom, as I mentioned, many scholars take to be a pseudonym for Theocritus himself. Simikidas and two friends have left the city and they're going to Hellas for the offering to Demeter of the first fruits of the harvest, being organised by two people, Phrasidamus and Antigenes. They haven't yet gone halfway when they meet a certain person, Lycidas, of whom we'll say more perhaps a bit later. He's the one whom some scholars believe is a kind of meant to be a representative of, or an incarnation of, or Apollo in disguise. This Lycidas from Kydon, possibly from Crete, whom they recognise as a shepherd. Lycidas clearly recognises Simikidas, whom he addresses by name, smiling, and we'll say a bit more about that later. Just to get a feeling for what's going on in terms of the geography, there's a nice map in Chomley's edition of Theocritus, which is worth having a quick look at. So the group is setting out from Kos, which is over here on the water, on the coast. The island of Kos is a lovely, I have been to Kos, it's a beautiful island, it's certainly worth a visit. And they're heading downwards. They're going to mention this place. This is a modern map, so they're going to mention a Burina, which is Burina in modern times. Whether it's the same one has been debated. They're going to head up from there, turn off and go towards the end of the poem. They're going to go up to Phryxa here, or Phixa. And then finally, their main aim is to go to Hellas, which apparently is this place here, Haliki in modern Greek, And so that's where they're wandering off. It's about 10-kilometre walk that they're engaging in. Okay, so we come to the poem itself, and all I'm going to do is translate and read through it, and you'll need to consult commentaries on some of the more complicated aspects of the poem. Es chronos hanik egon tekai eukritos es ton halenta, herpomes ek polios, sun kai tritos amin amintas. Now, ace is for ain, so just there was, the past tense of the verb to be. There was a time, hanika, the hanika, when, ego, with an added nu on the end just for ego. So there was a time when I and Eucritus, well, this name means well chosen one. Now the main verb here is herpomes. Now the omes in this dialect for omen, so it's first person plural. This is from herpo, and this is just an augment here of some sort. Herpo is often used in poetry in the sense of just going, literally is creeping along, but perhaps made our way might be good. So there was a time when I and Eucritus, we were making our way from the city, Ace ton Halenta, to Hellas. And that's the place I mentioned over on the other part of the coast of the island. Sun detritos amin amintas. Now, amin for hamin, with us. So literally, and with us, amintas was the third. So amintas was joined in as the third person with us. Tai deoi ga etu kathalusia, kai phrasidamos cantis genes, duotechna leucopios, etipe estlon, kaon ton epanothen apoklutias, te kai autu kalkonas, burinon hos ek podos enue kranon, u in eresamenos petra gonu. So the next little bit, this name here is an alternate name for Demeter, and this is a dative form. You'll see this in the Homeric hymn to Demeter, for example. This is just another name for Demeter, the goddess. So it's explanatory gar, so for Thrasydamus, and now this is Crassus for Chi plus Antigenes, so Antigenes. So that's a name in here with a chi, Crassus. So Thrasydamus and Antigenes, etuke, well, prepared or made a thalusia. Now, a thalusia is harvest festival, harvest offerings, and that's the name of the poem. So the harvest offerings for Demeter. And it's imperfect here, so they were making harvest offerings for Demeter. And they were the two children, perhaps two sons, of Leucopius. This is a genitive of an eus verb, a noun. Now you can see the wolf root in here, and of course Apollo is connected with the wolf in the name. The various etymologies, of course, to do with Apollo's various names, and that's led some scholars to think that there's something going on here involving Apollo. So these are the two sons of Lycopius. Now we get an idiom here which is a little bit tricky. It's literally if anything is noble of the of the noble. There's another word for noble here. This is a very rare word. The Scholiast says it's a Spartan word, chaos. Another word for noble. So but perhaps you could translate the eslon as glorious. So if there is, if anything is glorious among the noble ones of those perhaps by descent. It's from above, so hence by descent, as descendants, in other words. So if anything is noble of the glorious, of those who are descended from Clytia and Chalcone himself. This is a genitive here after apo, and the auto for autu, so it's emphatic, and for Chalcone himself. Now, the Clytia was the daughter of Merops, the founding hero of the Coans, and so hence an important figure on Kos. She married Eurypylus, the son of Poseidon, and Chalcone was their son. This is the person mentioned here. So we have to probably, this is slightly idiomatic, but does occur elsewhere in Greek. You've got to probably supply another epsilon before this. So the two sons of Lycopius, who are noble if anything is noble or anything is glorious among those noble ones by descent from Clytia and from Chalcone himself. Chalcone hos, who, the main verb, the verb here is anue, and this will be an imperfect here without augment. So anuo means to complete, really, but it can mean to make or create is another meaning. So he created ekpodos by means of his foot, a kranon. He made a stream by means, or a spring perhaps, by means of his foot. En eresamenos, this is from eredo in the middle, so having, and then en. So having, having placed or set his gonu, his knee, well against the rock. So having placed in the right way, having placed well, having leaned well his knee against the rock. So just to do that little bit, so it's all clear there. So we have the two sons of Lycopius, who are noble, if anything is glorious among those noble by descent, from Clytia and from Chalcone himself, who, by pressing his knee well into the rock or against the rock, it's dative after the N, he made, by means of his foot, he made a kranon, a spring. Now this is this spring Burina, which I mentioned is also on the modern map. It's still debated whether the modern name is a later edition or whether it's just another version of this one. I'll leave you to look at the commentaries on that. Tai for high, Tai depha autan, igeroi ptelei, te euskion alsos, hu phinon chloroisin petaloisi kate rees com osai. So the autan is referring back to the kranon. So beside this spring, so beside the spring, and the tie goes with the egeiroi, which is a feminine noun. So these are poplar trees, and the elm trees. And the main verb here is huphinon. They weave a euskion. This is u plus the skia root of shade. So the well-shaded Alsos grove. Now you have a participle here. The verb is, so the ageros is the black poplar. So koman is to be leafy. It's literally to grow their hair long. And there's lots of examples of the growth of trees and foliage compared with hair. So here I think I'm just going to translate it to be leafy. And this is a participle here, and it must be agreeing back with the ptelei. So we've got the black poplars and the elms, were weaving a shady grove, literally being leafy, and then the cat a rephes it's connected with that verb of roof, so roofed over, so forming a roof, and then with their pale or green petaloisin leaves. So it's something like being leafy, forming a roof with their green or rich or green leaves. Notice also we get a 4-word line here, which is always keep an eye out for those. In Greek it generally means you slow down and it's quite emphatic. And it also helps to round off that first section, that first 9 lines, describing where they're going. It's a very clever poetic trope. Kupotan mesatan hodon anumes, udi tosama ahamin to brasila katephinato, kaitin hoditan eslon sun moisaisi, kunodikon huramis andra, unumamin lukidan, eis de aipolos, ude ke tisnin gnoiesen idon, epe aipolo ex ok I oke, or he oike I should say. So kupo for kai upo, so not yet. Now anumes, this is again umen, umes for umen, it's from that anuo verb again, to complete. So we had not completed literally the middle part, the middle road. Hodos, of course, is feminine, so tan for tain, mesatan for mesatane, adjective. So it means we hadn't gotten even halfway, we had not yet reached halfway. Literally, we had not completed the middle of the hodos, can often mean journey, the middle of the journey. Nor did sama for sema, that's the tomb, the Brasila tomb, that is the tomb of Brasilis. Now the name Brasilis does not apparently occur outside of this poem, and nor is the location known. So nor did the tomb of Brasilis, katephinato, come into sight, hamin for hamin for us. Now Greek says kai here, we would say when in English, but the Greek just says and. So perhaps I'll translate it as when. Hurames is the main verb here, again mes for men. This is the aorist from heurisco. So we found a man, tin hoditan, hoditain, first declension masculine. This is a wayfarer. You can see the hod root in here. A certain wayfarer, Kudonikon, that is from Kudonia. Now there is a Kudonia in Crete, but there are places with the same name elsewhere. You should see perhaps Hunter's commentary ad loc here. So a certain wayfarer, Ethlon sun moisaisi, which I take to mean who was held in high esteem or noble with the muses. So perhaps something like held in high esteem among the muses or by the muses. Others take it to mean, take the Ethlon with the hoditan directly and then say this is separate with the help of the muses. I'm not sure. I think I prefer the other translation. So we found, almost we came across, a certain wayfaring man from Kydonia who was Ethlon sun moisaisi, who was held in high regard or held in esteem by the muses. an epsilon among the Muses. Unima for onima in this dialect, and his name, and we get a men and we'll get a de a bit further on, just here. His name was Lycidas. Now this is a very important, interesting name. Again, you see this Luke root in here, connected with wolves and hence with Apollo. Of course, this name was copied later on. You get the famous poem, the Lycidas, by Milton, writes a whole poem on this Lycidas, and you'll see also in some of the Roman pastoral poetry of Virgil as well uses this name Lycidas. Who this is, I think the entire poem, interpretation of the poem all depends on how you understand this Lycidas as to who he really is. Is he some kind of god in disguise? Is he Apollo in disguise? Well, this is something for debate and thought. So his name was Lycidas, ace, as we've seen, for ain, and he was but we get a men and a de. His name was Lycidas, but he was an Ipolos, a goatherd. Then we get this very cryptic line here, which again has been much written about. Udiketis nin agnoiesen idon. Nor would someone, having seen him, this is from agnoio, you can see the alpha privative, which has been augmented, and the gnoi root of knowing. So, nor would someone who had seen him would have failed to realise, or failed to recognise, perhaps, nin for auton, epe ipolon exaka heoike, since he resembled very much excessively a goatherd, since he resembled remarkably a goatherd. So let me just go back through that bit there. So we had not yet completed half our journey, nor had the tomb of Brasilas appeared for us, when we found, or perhaps we came upon, a certain wayfaring man, a man who was noble or good with the Muses, so perhaps held in regard with them by the Muses, something like that, who was from Kydonia. And his name was Lycidas, but he was, and I think it is a but here, but he was an Ipolos, he was a goatherd. Nor would anyone, having seen him, fail to recognise him or fail to understand that he was a goatherd, since he resembled excessively a goatherd. He resembled a goatherd extremely. Ekmenga lasioio, dasotrikos aiketragoio, knarkon dem omoisinias tamisoio potosdon, amphidehoi steithesingeron esphingeto peplos, so steri placero, roikan dechen, agri elio, dexitera, korunan. And we get an explanatory ga, another men, and we'll get a det down here, for he had, it's an imperfect from echo, so perhaps he was wearing a knarkon dem. Now knarkon simply is an adjective meaning yellow or tawny, so some sort of tawny garment. So he was wearing a yellow or tawny skin from and we get this very strange here because these words all mean exactly the same thing. We've got lasioio, lasios means shaggy or hairy, dasos also means hairy, and then trikos, also hairy. So he was wearing a tawny skin made from the thick-haired, shaggy tragoio goat, and he was wearing it omoisin on his shoulders, and potosdone, pot for pros, and then the osdone for zeta here, so it was sort of smelling of. So it's smelling, and I think neas here is adverbial, smelling recently from, or still smelling recently from the tamisos, which is a rennet. This, of course, is a thing you get from the stomach of cows used to coagulate milk in the making of cheese, because he's a goat herd, of course. So still smelling of the, well, it could be, neas actually could be genitive here, of new or fresh, perhaps that's probably better, of fresh rennet. So smelling of fresh rennet might be best here. Amphidehoistethesin and a geron peplos, an old robe, esfingeto, imperfect from sfingo, it's passive here, was tied around the chest for him with a belt which is placora, a broad belt, and he had in his right hand, so roikan de ekon, yeah, so he held in his right hand a curved coronon, is a club, a curved club made of this is wild olive. You can see the elia root here and the agrot root here. This is a genitive. So made from wild olive. Kaime atremas ape cesaros onomati medi onti gelos de hoi ergatai kelius. And now cesaros is a perfect participle from syro, which means to grin. Apparently the original meaning was to draw back the teeth, and then it comes to mean a grin. So an atremas adverb, so it's something like calmly, without trembling. So calmly he spoke to me, met for moi I think here, as he was smiling, and he was smiling with a smiling oma, literally eye, with a smiling eye, is literally what it says here, perhaps with a twinkling eye. And then gelos to hoiekato kelius. This is a genitive here, I think. So gelos here is something like laughter, and this is from echo in the middle, clung to him, and then I think this is a genitive, by his lips, or clung to his lips. So laughter clung to the lips for him, the hoi for auto. So just to quickly do that, go through that bit again. For a yellow skin, sorry, for he was wearing a tawny skin made from a shaggy, thick-haired goat. On his shoulders, he was wearing it, smelling from the fresh rennet, and an old robe was tied for him around his breast, around his chest, was tied with a broad belt, and he had in his right hand a crooked staff, or a crooked club, perhaps coronon's better, club I think, made from wild olive. And calmly, as he was smiling, he spoke to me with a sparkling eye, or perhaps a smiling eye, laughing eye, and a laughter clung to his lips. And that's the first 20 lines of the poem.